7 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Ken, would you take the roll, please?
Yes, I will, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Wagner,
Here.
Commissioner Young,
Here.
Mr. Stender,
Here.
Commissioner Miller,
Here.
Chair Gerard.
Here.
Thank you.
We ask if you're able, please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chair is looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented or with changes.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Motion and a second. It's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We have come to our part, which is the open forum. We ask if anyone wishes to talk about anything about the city, you're more than welcome to come up. If you have specific questions on the two public hearings, there will be a time at that point to also speak. So this would be for, I would say, more general concerns you may have. Does anyone wish to speak at this time? All right, seeing no one come forward, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Chair is looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion, I have a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor by signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Aye. Item 7A, it's a public hearing for a variance for a side yard setback at 518 8th Avenue Northwest, Cathy, Bentfield, BZ 24-1290, and resolution number 01-22-25-01. Ken, I assume you're giving the presentation?
You are correct, sir. Thank you for the introduction. I'll pull up a couple of maps here for the, no. So as you introduced, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the variance request is for the property at 518 8th Avenue Northwest. The map of that property is on the screen. I click on a couple other maps for, that's a very enlarged one. This one. This map then shows a little more, this is the entire property of which the variance request is made for. The variance is regarding a proposed deck on this west side of the home. The request is to build the deck with a 5-foot setback from this side property line here, this line, instead of the 10 feet that's normally required by the zoning code. One more image I will pull up. This is a survey of the property showing the proposed deck, again with the 5-foot setback here at its closest point, and actually angles down to a 10-foot setback or a little more here in this location. The request is in part, and I'm going to click to another image, we'll get to it here, to replace a crumbling patio that's on that side of the home. Gotta get to the photos here that were part of the submittal. These are in your packet. This shows it. Existing patio door here, down 2 steps to a crumbling concrete patio. And again, the request is to build a deck that would be at the level of the patio doors and come out. So it would be 5 feet from the side property line instead, or excuse me, yeah, 5 feet from the side property line. These pictures that are included in the packet also show some deck construction that started last summer. Unfortunately, it was started before they got a building permit, and that was explained in the narrative, but in short, the city put a stop work order on the project and said, need to get a building permit. They applied for the building permit, and through that process of reviewing setbacks, we determined that it was going to be too close to the property line. Thus, they have revised their plan to, this plan now to reduce the size of the deck, to meet this, have a 5-foot setback and then wrap it around to the rear of the home. The city, as Commissioner Wood is well aware for the members of the audience, has several criteria for approving variances of any type in the city of Forest Lake. And in particular, the one important phrase that is in our code, it says that the Planning Commission shall not recommend approval of any variance application unless it finds failure to grant the variance will result in practical difficulties for the applicant. And then there's several things that, or items that we look at as part of a variance request. Does it meet those criteria or not? One of the primary reasons for this deck proposal, according to the applicant, is, again, to have it at the same level as the floor of the home, and then allow one of the members of the home to easily get to the rear of the property. As she noted, this person, I believe, is either using crutches or a wheelchair or both. And so not having steps and having a deck at that level will make their life clearly easier and more mobile to get out to the rear yard rather than stepping down to a patio that's crumbling. In reviewing the rest of the criteria, we'll look at, would the proposal have a negative effect on the neighbors? Is there something that would have caused economic, or excuse me, not economic, are there problems that it would create for the neighboring property? And in short, I didn't find any, and that's included in my report that you've had to read. One of the other criteria we'll look at is the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner. And as the applicant noted, they bought the property with the patio door in place, and where the the home was situated on the lot is a situation they did not create. And I'll point this out. There's this triangular piece of land here, and this also shows up on one of the other on this line here. This triangular piece of land is owned by this neighbor here. My guess is, looking at the situation, is the original lot line was this one that's farther to the west. But at some point, a problem was discovered with where this home was built, or the builder of this home decided they wanted more property to go with this lot, and essentially cut this piece off of this lot. So the side setback is even reduced further, because now there's a strip of land that probably was with this lot that no longer is. I don't know the history of it, but that's my best guess looking at what I see, compared to all the other lot lines are nice and straight and more or less parallel north-south. It just seems odd that there's that little triangular piece that's probably was with this lot. Again, a situation these current owners did not create, and creates more of a hardship for them. So with all that said, it's staff's recommendation that the City Planning Commission, excuse me, adopt the resolution in the packet. It's Resolution 01-22-2503. I think that's correct. Or it might be 01, excuse me.
01.
Yep, yeah, the staff report says I had an error there. And that's recommending approval of the variance that would allow the deck, as shown here, to be installed with the 5-foot setback to the side property line. The one condition on this approval is we're suggesting that it be subject to the applicant or contractor getting all the necessary permits from the city before starting construction on the new deck. I know the applicant owner is out of town, I believe, possibly in Arizona, but Joshua, the contractor working on the project with Cathy, the owner, I believe, came in. He's, I would assume, be available to answer questions if there are any. But first of all, I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Questions of staff? Hearing none, would the applicant, can you just give me a couple minutes?
Okay.
Thank you. Is the contractor here? Would you like to add anything?
I think Ken did a great job.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing. The way this works, we ask if you wish to speak to this issue, please step up to the lectern. Excuse me. State your name and address for the record. Spend a couple minutes giving us your thoughts on this application. Once we have heard from everyone, we will close the public hearing. It'll come back for a decision by the Planning Commission then.
We're the immediate neighbors. My name is Janet Rondo, and we're really good friends of Cathy, and we would love to have them have a beautiful deck. My question is, when they redo it, how wide is it coming outside of the door there?
So, Ken,
Before it goes to the back?
can you explode that up a little farther, Ken?
Yep.
7.5 feet.
So it shows 7.5 feet here. I'm going to guess it's 5, maybe 6 feet wide at its narrowest point here, coming out of the door.
Okay. All right, because when I was texting with her, you know, she wanted to make sure that there was enough area to safely walk and, like you say, transport somebody in a wheelchair. So I was just curious. And then, right now, unfortunately, the deck that's sitting there doesn't go to the back, but now this new one will?
Correct.
Just what's shown in yellow here is the proposed plan.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, did you get her address?
No.
524.
524?
Thank you.
By the way, I opened the public hearing at 7:11 PM. I apologize for that. Sir?
My name is Bruce Wolfbauer. My wife Cathy live across the street, just a door or two down. And we also would like to see them,
The address, please?
607 8th Avenue Northwest.
Thank you.
We'd
Proceed.
also like to see them improve their property with this deck out there because of the way, condition of the other cement, and the step down was out of the kitchen before. And I do have a little bit of back history. We've been there since day one in that development concerning that house that's tipped, the next door neighbor's house that Jan and Dwayne live in. That was actually the realtor selling the property that moved into that house and bought that property. And I believe that they positioned that house so he could get a bigger house on that lot, and they turned it so that it wouldn't be too close to the property line and the easements back then. So that's just some history that I'm kind of aware of back in 1994. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joshua Schoen, 507 8th Avenue. I'm actually a neighbor as well. And I just wanted to touch base with you about, so that existing patio she has, it'll actually be 3 feet more towards her house when we're all sitting done with the deck. So it'll give you more green grass in between than you had before the deck.
So it's narrower than the existing.
Right. This,
Or
On
it's
this
wider.
the patio's wider, but the deck will be narrower.
Correct.
Right.
Yep, exactly.
Is it?
Chair, I have a question. For
Josh?
Josh, are you the one that constructed this deck at the point it's at right now?
I am, yep.
Were you unaware that you needed permits in the city of Forest Lake to do that?
No, we just thought we would do it, try to get away with it. Not gonna lie to you,
How's that working for you?
not good. Not good at all.
Thank you.
My husband is concerned about the property line, so I know there's been people out there doing the surveying and stuff.
Correct.
So when you talk about this little V thing, does that belong to us legally then?
Yes,
Okay.
For which part?
this.
Ken, are there
Because
two-
at some point, we're gonna sell our house, you know, as we get older. And we wanna make sure that the new owner would be.
Are there two separate PIDs on that? Okay,
Yeah, see right, see
So
on the
the
screen. I'm
line on
circling.
the,
yep,
so which owner
got it.
owns the triangle?
This,
This lady.
the home immediately to the west.
Okay,
Yeah, so she doesn't own the triangle.
Yeah, no, they do.
all right. Okay.
not the applicant.
Not the applicant.
And like I say, you know, there's no animosity between us now, but, you know, you always gotta look to the future, because the next person down the road, you know, has to be happy too if they're gonna buy your house, so. I appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to this application?
I've got a couple of questions. Was the patio removed before installing the deck, or was it left underneath?
It was left underneath.
It was left. And then I don't see stairs accessing the new deck. Where will the stairs go?
There will be two, one around the corner. And
Josh, do you want to come up and use the mic, please?
So basically, there'll be one up against the house going out south, that is, and then one coming out. She hasn't quite settled on her locations yet, but I believe one up against the house coming out. But there's a window there, so it might get goofy, but
So in
we'll
here,
definitely have those on the final plans when we see
in here, Josh, so you see where the cursor's moving?
Yep, exactly, yep.
And
One
then would
right
there be-
there is what she's thinking, and then one, yep, up top there.
Okay.
And it's 14 inches about off the ground, so.
Anyone else wish to speak to this application? Ken, do we have anyone online or anything that needs to be read into the minutes?
No and no.
Thank you. Last call for anyone who wishes to speak to this application. Seeing no one come up, we will close the public hearing and we'll bring it back to the, to the commissioners for a decision. Ken, I have one question for you. On the, and this picture is just perfect. So we're 5 feet on the one corner and 10 feet on the other. Do we attach this to the resolution? So we're, by granting a 5 feet, they could straighten that out and make it 5 feet all the way down. But do we attach the drawing to the resolution, so what the intent is?
Mr. Chair, ma'am, or members of the commission, the resolution doesn't specifically say that. If you want to say, to allow the 5-foot setback and condition it to follow the site plan as included with the staff report, that'd certainly be a fine addition.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Just let me know where you want it in there. Other comments, questions, concern? Hearing none, the chair is entertaining a motion to approve, deny, or table this application. Commissioner Young?
Mr. Chair, I would move approval of resolution number 01-22-25-01 with the amendment that the 8th whereas says, after much discussion and review, the Forest Lake Planning Commission moved to approve a 5-foot side yard setback variance to allow the proposed deck addition as
shown in the
As
site
shown in
plan
the
and the
attached
staff
drawing?
report, or, yeah.
from the side property line.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
And a motion and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We are the final decision unless someone wants to challenge the decision that we made. Otherwise, in a week time, the decision will stand as is. So good luck on your project. Is she in Arizona? Good luck down in Arizona.
We're just all the neighbors.
Pardon me?
We're all the neighbors.
Yeah, maybe
And
it's
it's-
snowing there too.
And it's really nice to see such supportive neighbors.
Yes.
Very nice.
It's a great neighborhood, so.
You're welcome to stay, or you can go home. We're a pretty exciting group, so.
If I could have 1 minute, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Find out where we're at. Let the throng clear out of,
Are we good?
yes, thank you.
That's such a rambunctious crowd. Item 7B, it's also a public hearing, variance for a lot size 18323 Forest Boulevard North, Dan Emery, PZ 24-1295, resolution number 01-22-25-02. Ken, I assume you're presenting?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
As you introduced, Mr. Daniel Emery has made an application to the city for a lot area variance, for the property at 18323 Forest Boulevard. On this map, that is this lot here. I'm gonna put up a bunch of other maps here. Also shown here. Property currently is 5.09 acres. Yeah, that's it for this site here. Mr. Emery is proposing to buy this property, and Justin Bowser owns this property and owns all this property around it. And Mr. Emery's been working with him to buy additional property when he buys the home and the 5 acres to create a larger lot. And the minimum lot size in this area, in our zoning district, our ag district, is 20 acres. So he had 2 initial choices. You know, let me get another map here. Okay, and here's our agricultural zoning, showing the whole area. A 20-acre lot would have been so another 15 acres, possibly widening it out on Highway 61, Forest Boulevard, and then going way back in here someplace. I don't remember the exact layout. Or if he could have just over 10 acres, which gives him clearly more room. And let's see if I can find, so no, that isn't it. I know I've got the plan here someplace, hang on. Now, here's another view, let's go with this. So again, the property's here, this is the gross acreage. And the 10-acre plan comes back right about to this point here, which is a 60-foot wide access piece of property out to 184th. And 20 acres, he would not have needed a variance, go through a minor subdivision, been through the process. But the advantage of having a 10-acre lot is, well, it's not as much acreage, but it allows Mr. Bowser to keep more property for future potential development on the remainder of his site. So that was that's what they settled on. Again, he's requesting the 10-acre piece. I know it's included in your report, I apologize, I can't find it right now. So he's applied for the variance to have the smaller lot size. Again, as the previous application, we have their variance criteria. One thing I looked at, and a little bit different with this case, is the zoning of the area and our land use designation. Again, ag zoning, these are all 2 to 3 acre, maybe 1 5-acre property, all have an ag zoning. Across the highway to the west are all ag zoning. And I did some math on the properties. Along 184th, they run from 2.51 acres to 3.35 acres. And the properties across the highway range in size from 10 acres to 41.5 acres. In my opinion, having a 10-acre property is certainly characteristic of the area. Even a 5-acre property is not out of character with these properties on 184th, although it fronts on, has a driveway on Forest Boulevard. I think what happened, again, I didn't do a deep dive into the history, I think all this was probably one property, and then the subdivision went in, and then it left the house by itself. And this all got platted because this is all part of a plat, and this is an outlot reserved for future development. Touching on, I'll go back to our comprehensive plan. Well, this shows our sewer staging. This is a good talking point. The comprehensive plan has sewer staging, and when we, the city, expect sanitary sewer to eventually get to properties. And the corridor right along Highway 61 is shown here in blue. It generally follows this NSP power line easement in this area. This area is, according to, this is our showing development stage 3 here in the blue, which means sewer by 2040. And the brown area is post 2040 sanitary sewer. So a long way to say, I don't expect, and I don't think the city expects sanitary sewer to get to this area anytime soon. Why that's important is the comprehensive plan has shown the same corridor for mixed-use development, and this is shown in the comprehensive plan for medium-density residential, I believe, which, I've got that in the comp plan, yeah. Both of those types of development would need sanitary sewer and city water, neither of which are going to be in that area anytime soon. Having a 10-acre piece, again, here, will help preserve the remainder or more of this area, have it available for development, again, when sanitary sewer and water get there, if they ever do. I'm a long way to get to a point. I don't see a problem with this request. It's, from any of these neighbors, they will not know the difference whether it's a 5-acre or 10-acre piece. It reserves, again, a larger part of this for future development, provides, it gives Mr. Bowser more options if and when he wants to sell the property. That is kind of a summary of my overview of the report. The one thing to point out is the applicant wanted more acreage in part so he could have more, potentially have more accessory buildings. And Ms. Young pointed out, and we reviewed the code, that the 10-acre, more than 10-acre property, you're allowed 2 detached accessory buildings. If you want to have more, then you would need a 20-acre piece. So just to make sure you're clear about that. So I guess with that, I will stop my talking. The applicant is here to answer questions, and I will take your questions from the commission.
Commissioners, questions? Kevin?
Can you
Yes.
tell me how many, I can't really see in the picture, are there accessory buildings on the property currently?
Yes, there's a detached garage up in here, and then a pole barn.
So that's 2.
Yes,
So you'd say he's at his max currently?
correct.
Okay, that's all I have.
Susan?
Name and address, please?
Dan Emery, and I currently live at 51 Clarence Avenue Southeast in Minneapolis.
I just want to make sure that you understand that as things set now, those 2 accessory buildings are the maximum for the 10 acres.
Correct.
And I just noticed in the application that you were thinking about putting additional buildings on there.
I was thinking about it, yes, if I bought the 20 acres, but I don't see that's an issue. It's got a big building on it now,
Okay.
so.
And you realize how much of the property is wetland?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Those are just the questions that I have, sort of eyes wide open sort of thing.
We're in a wide open meeting tonight. Any other comments you would like to add?
No, I just, we looked at going to 20 acres and it didn't make sense with the future layout and development of the property with the mixed-use zoning in the front and the future. And then if I did the 20 acres, there's also a tentative plan for a road to come through there in their comp plan. So we didn't want to use too much road frontage up. And then if I went back, it would be taking away that access point from the other neighborhood. So that's when I went over it with Ken and he said, you're right, it does make sense with the 10 acres. So in the event I don't get the 10 acres, we'll just switch and go with the 20 acres. We just think it makes more sense this way.
Okay.
I agree.
And I can always do the 20 acres later, I would assume. so,
Buy another 10.
yeah. I do know the seller, we've been friends for 20 years, so it's part of the drive to get the land is he owns all the land next to it, and I have 2 kids, so it's a good fit. So,
All right, good.
thank you.
Any other questions of staff? None? This is a public hearing. We ask if anyone wishes to speak to this application, please step up to the lectern, state your name and address for the record. Spend a couple minutes giving us your thoughts. Once we've heard from all parties, we will close the public hearing. So we'll open the public hearing at 7:30. Does anyone wish to speak to this application? Ken, do we have anyone online, or is there anything to read in?
No and no again.
All right, I'll ask one more time. Does anyone wish to speak to this application? Seeing no one come forward, we'll close the public hearing at 7:31 PM. Commissioners, your thoughts? And before we start, I will give my 2 cents here. This would create a non-conforming lot still because of the ag. In all of my years on the commission, I've never seen someone with 10 acres be non-conforming, so I don't really have any problem with this at all. It brings it closer to conforming.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's unique.
So that's my 2 cents. Anyone wish to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the lot area variance request to allow the creation of a 10.1 acre parcel for the property located at 18323 Forest Boulevard North.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
is that
sir.
For adoption of the resolution that does that? Was that the intent of the motion? There is an actual resolution.
Yes, to adopt the resolution.
Thank you. I didn't want to assume anything, but
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor by signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. So this will move forward, and you're good to go. If no one challenges our decision, the planning commission is the final decision typically in this unless someone wishes to challenge it. But if no one does within the next 7 days, then our motion will stand. So welcome to the neighborhood.
And you're free to go if you wish.
well, we're going to talk landscaping. It's going to be
Yeah, this would be right up there with signs. All right, item 8A, discussion on landscape ordinance revisions. Ken, since I don't see anybody else in there, I assume you're giving a presentation.
I'm getting my money's worth, or you're getting your money's worth out of me tonight, however you want to put it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the commission is aware, we've been working on updating the zoning code almost for a year now. The first big accomplishment was the reorganization of the code, which was adopted in April of 2024. That, we called it the architecture of the code, and laid it out so it made more sense and flowed together in a better organization, we believe, we hope. In December last year, then, we had a review and discuss changes to definitions in the zoning code. We also, at that time, at least had included some information, I believe, on landscaping, but we didn't get to that at that meeting, so here we are. We're going to talk about landscape code. So the goal of when we staff, Claire and myself, started looking at the landscape code, as the commission's well aware, there's one section that often gives us problems about how many plants need to be planted on a commercial industrial site. It's the 30, it's based on the linear footage of the property, 1 tree for every 30 linear foot, and 1 shrub or ornamental tree for every 10 feet. And I think it was even brought up during the interstate project about how many trees, how many shrubs can they really get on a property? Does this make sense? So that was one of our focus points for trying to improve the ordinance. Our goal, both for Claire and myself, when we started looking at it, we thought, this landscape ordinance is pretty involved. There's a lot of elements there. Might there be a shorter, more condensed version that will still serve the city, that we could just do a repeal and replace? We're just gonna get rid of everything we have and try to boil it down to something that would be more manageable. And she looked at several ordinances. I looked at a few ordinances from other cities in the area. And as I summarized in the report, the simple, what I would call the simple landscape ordinances were one page and really didn't cover enough, didn't do enough. And then there were some that were even more complex than the Forest Lake Code. And we thought, boy, we don't want to go there. But in reviewing those codes, we did find some language that we thought would be helpful, including some proposed language, which is in the draft ordinance, about how to better handle, in our opinion, the number of trees and shrubs that need to be planted on a site. And that is on page 47 and 48 in your packet, which is also in the ordinance. And we did find language in these other ordinances that talk about the landscape requirement being based on an area calculation rather than the perimeter of the property. And the way these other ordinances did it, they would have the applicant calculate the landscape area of a site. In other words, the areas that are not building or pavement or existing natural areas that are going to be preserved, calculate how many square footage, how many square feet that is, the area, and then use that as a determining factor for how many trees, shrubs, ornamental trees would need to be planted. So what I have proposed, again, towards the bottom of page 47 on page 48 of your packet, says the minimum number of required overstory trees and the minimum number of required understory trees and shrubs on a project site shall be determined as follows. Total square footage of all landscape areas on the site shall be calculated. Landscape areas include anywhere on the site that is not building and pavement, existing natural areas, or existing natural areas such as wetlands. Then it goes on to say the proposed landscape plan shall show one plant unit, which means one tree or shrub or ornamental, for every 3,000 square feet of landscape area or open space on a project site. And then item C, and there's a typo there, it says no less that, and it should be no less than 30% of the required number of plantings may be overstory trees, and no more than 70% of the required plantings may be ornamental or trees or shrubs. So in other words, we didn't want somebody to just say, well, I gotta do a whole bunch of plantings, I'm just going to do all trees and shrubs. Or conversely, we don't wanna severely penalize and say, well, you gotta just plant all big trees either. We're trying to strike a balance there, have some minimums and maximum. So I did a little math. As an example, if a site had 2,000 square feet of landscape area that we used as a calculation, 10%, and under the old formula, if we divided that by 10, that'd be 200 shrubs. And if you divide it by 30, that would have been 67 trees, which would be 267 plants. And if I did my math right, that would be 75% of those would be shrubs, 25% would be trees. Just as an example of how that should work.
Where my math is right.
So that's probably the biggest change in the ordinance that, and again, trying to resolve what I would call the most troublesome part of our landscape code that we've dealt with in recent, and since my time here. The rest of the ordinance, so the entire landscape ordinance is in your packet, starting on page 49. Did I do my math wrong?
No, you did your math right, but
Okay,
I did some math too, so
okay.
I was just making sure that my math was right.
So the entire landscape ordinance, existing ordinance is in the packet, again, starting on page 49. We have proposed new language with bold and underline and striking out sections. I'm happy to walk through that if you wish. I can highlight some of the most important changes. Let me highlight a couple of the important changes if I may. So, on, it would be page 49, landscape plan A, added in the use of institutional uses. The code didn't specifically say that institutional uses, which are churches, schools, public facilities, had to have a landscape plan. It was always kind of assumed, I think. So we added that as another type of use that has to have a landscape plan. And Jesse was asking for the meeting. These are for everything except single-family homes and twin homes. Every other type of development is required to have a landscape plan, so that's why it's important to call out institutional uses there. Second, probably most important change is going over onto page 50. Item C, kind of in the middle towards the bottom. The language talked about minor changes and major changes. I'm proposing at the end that major changes shall only be approved by the planning commission. It doesn't make sense to me that if the planning commission approved the original landscape plan, that a major revision go to the city council if they never were a part of the review process. We'll see what the council thinks about that, but I think it made sense to me. So it's a policy change, but I think it made sense to me. Page 51 then, in the middle has the strikeout of number 2, the existing language, and then the proposed language that I went through. We can talk about that more if we need to. Towards the top of page 52, item D, we added in some minimum sizes for potted shrubs and for planting evergreens. There weren't specifics standards in the code, so I wanted to add those in. Added in Amur maple as a species not to be planted or to not be planted. Added language about traffic visibility at intersections to make sure that that is correct, and so the landscaping does not cause a problem. Item D, towards the bottom of page 53, we expanded the language about the USDA Zone 3 hardiness. Some of you may be aware our hardiness zones have changed through the years, so we made it just a more general term that plantings have to be indigenous to the appropriate hardiness zone and physical characteristics of the site. So hopefully a little more flexible, but a little clearer at the same time. And then on page 55, if you recall the last time we looked at this, we proposed to bring in all the landscape language from all the districts and put them into this landscape ordinance. So items H, I, J, and K, they're all in bold. Those are all existing words. We're just moving them now, so all landscaping is in one place. And this is the same that you saw the last time. None of these words have changed. They're just moved to a different spot. One thing then on page 56, item M, we're proposing, item M is new language. It says all areas, that should be all areas, already a typo, not otherwise improved in accordance with the approved site plan shall be sodded. Exceptions are as follows. Seeding of future expansion areas as shown on approved plans. Undisturbed areas containing existing viable natural vegetation that can be maintained free of foreign or noxious plant materials. The use of mulch materials such as rock or wood chips in support of shrubs or foundation plantings. I think all that was probably, again, assumed when somebody put a landscape plan together, especially the area where future expansion areas are shown on plans. It doesn't make sense to have those planted with trees or sodded or irrigated if they're showing expansion. Now, the risk is, if the expansion never occurs, well, it's green grass, hopefully, and that's fine. But I think it, again, that just shows plan for the future, and you don't have to plant in those areas. We're still gonna require the same number of trees and shrubs. Rest of the site, you can kind of leave open space for, maybe it's a parking lot, maybe it's a building addition, those kind of things. That's the intent of that. When I was reading through this again this afternoon, for building foundation landscaping, I was going to propose they add the word institutional in there in the beginning. I don't have, it's not in there now, so that would be a change I'd be recommending that wasn't shown, just like have institution at the beginning. Page 57, we add in some language about native plantings are allowed, again, making sure that that's clear. And I think those are probably the major changes. Again, the most important one, the most challenging one is the language about the number of trees and shrubs to plant. So again, summary, rather than replacing the ordinance, in my opinion and Claire's opinion, it was better to work with what we have, because as you can see, a lot of the language is good. We're not recommending changes to all of it, but we're changing enough of it to hopefully make it more consistent with current practices and serve the city and developers better going forward. And with that, I'll take questions.
Susan, I gotta believe you got one. If it's
I-
landscaping.
Well, I have several, but other folks may want to go first.
Kevin?
I just have one. Ken, when you were talking about item M, where there are areas not otherwise improved in accordance with the approved site plans, and you allow seeding, and we're allowing seeding and things like that, is there something in place to, do we still have to mitigate erosion? Do they still have to leave up erosion fences and things like that until that takes hold?
Yes.
How is that maintained?
Yeah, that's both a city standard and a watershed district standard.
Okay.
I got a question. On page 59, under landscape guarantee, it says that all new plants will be guaranteed for 1 full year.
Yes.
So if they do a building and all the trees die after 2 years, we don't require them to replant them?
Well, no, I think we've had, no, I'm gonna take that back, because reading that, you'd say, no, we don't. But I think we've added language to say, let me find it, that they have to, I think they have to,
Page 58?
I thought we added language saying you gotta maintain your landscaping.
Page 58D, number 2. And I saw that, and to me, it's kind of wishy-washy, but let's see if that is what
Okay.
you were looking for.
Yeah, I guess that does kind of cover it there.
Right.
The trouble is, it's notification by the city, and we are not really good usually
Drive around looking.
at noticing those things.
Correct.
So do we need stronger language in our, that you suggesting?
Or more staff?
That's for other people that sit up at the dais.
I understand. And actually, that, if I may, if we got, I would imagine if we got a complaint that XYZ businesses over there, all their landscaping has died. We would investigate as a staff and say, by the way, you gotta take care of this. But that would be on a complaint basis.
I got an address for that.
Ken, and irrigation, which has always been a kind of a sore spot. Up in 153, 135B9,
What page are you on, Paul?
I'm on my notes, which have no page number.
Fair enough.
153,
153, 136,
6?
135B9.
Okay.
So it'll be early on. 25B9.
Location and preliminary design of all in-ground irrigation system.
Which is
Needs to
page,
be systems for those landscape areas the designer determined will need irrigation to survive.
which is page
Okay,
50.
hold that thought for a second.
That's one that I flagged, too.
So, but then we get up to 136, number F, and it says, we require sprinklers. So is it always a requirement? I just want them to match. I prefer the stuff to be alive also, but I'd like them to match from an ordinance standpoint.
So to the first part on 9, the goal with that is if they can plant materials that don't need irrigating, say, I don't know, prairie grasses or other natural things that are, again, don't need irrigation, it doesn't make sense to irrigate everything if not everything needs irrigation. So they are a little bit inconsistent, I'll grant you that.
Well, but aren't we, letting the designer's gonna get squeezed by the developer for every nickel. So that's my fear of leaving it strictly up to the designer. Right.
Well, and so we could certainly drop the last part of that in 9 to say, drop the designer determines will need irrigation to survive, and just,
Even natives need to be irrigated the first year, and usually the first 3 years.
so I'm okay with that if you prefer to change to make it stronger.
Well, to me, if, like I say, the developers will squeeze their subs, and I'm sure this is one area they'd be more than happy to.
So if I may, number 9 could read, the location and preliminary design of in-ground irrigation system for landscape areas.
Yeah. I'm happy. And then I think the only other thing is, we have sizes on these trees.
Yes.
And you want them bald, so we're gonna tree spade them out. So, I'm replacing trees because I have emerald ash borer. And the nursery's telling me don't put in the big trees, because after 3 years, the smaller trees will exceed the growth of the bigger trees. Now, I don't know if this is completely true.
A 1.5-inch caliper is a trunk that is that big.
We're 2.5 though.
Yeah, we're 2.5 on the,
Great.
In
And that's
item
still
D.
that much.
Where's the caliber inch measured?
usually 6 feet above the ground.
I usually have taken it as chest high.
Oh,
And
5
so
feet up.
That's where it's,
4 feet from my height?
well, yeah. But it's not gonna change all that much in the,
That seems like a pretty big,
it's not really.
all right. Is that like a 10-gallon pot then, or a 20-gallon pot, or we have to get it spaded for that? They want them spaded here, and this is
Well,
those would seem to be really big trees.
I just helped a neighbor put in a red maple, and it was about that big around, all right? And it was in a little bit bigger, because I could not quite get around it, and it was in a 20-gallon pot.
So we specifically state that you gotta spade them.
Yeah, and we're not out checking what they get put in the ground. If they come in a pot, We're more concerned about the caliper inches.
Where are you seating the spading, please?
In item D, top of page 52.
Yep. Oh,
By a tree spade.
Well, it says, shall be balled and burlapped or removed from the growing site by a tree spade.
so they can just be a balled and burlapped. And quite frankly, container-grown trees should be fine. I would be tempted to,
Give them a diameter inch and
no,
call it a day.
I would delete that I would tempted to delete the first sentence. All right? And then just go with the minimum caliper size and the conifers being 6 feet. And then however they are purchased from the nursery, you know,
So you, if I may, you're not concerned if they come ball and burlapped or spading?
nope.
I don't know, I don't even think there's any other way to get a tree, is there?
Yeah, container grown.
Or?
Yeah, both mine
or-
came in containers,
Okay,
yeah.
So I would be tempted to delete that first sentence.
okay.
I would concur.
I would
Okay.
agree.
Is that a consensus of the commission?
Yes.
And we got at least 50%, I'm not sure.
I can see Kevin's really,
Doesn't matter to
Fine
me.
with that.
okay. This, yeah, it's, okay. First sentence is gone. Paul, did you have any others?
No, I think I'm done whining on it. So Susan, what do you got left?
Okay,
Do we,
what this says is,
do we need to go back to the beginning?
yes, please.
Okay.
What page we on?
We're on page 49, under landscape plan.
Yes.
It says in here, major subdivisions. And to me, this includes the landscape plans. If it's the landscape plans for the major subdivision, it's the landscape plans for each lot in those subdivisions. And I need to know how you are defining one plant unit. Because I too did the math. And what we had last week proposed was that 45 by 45 foot lot, which is 2,025 feet, which would then be required to have a shrub or a tree. And I don't think that that is sufficient.
What district was it in? Single family?
It was the one in Tannersbrook last week that came in. MXR.
So that's not detached, single family or two-family residential?
Yeah, he had detached on a 45 by 40 foot, 5 foot.
So our next section says detached, single family is 4 trees per lot.
And can I jump in for a minute?
Oh, absolutely.
I don't, again, been a little more than 2 years, I don't ever remember seeing a landscape plan for a major subdivision. We always, again, my time here so far, we just check that, make sure that 4 trees get planted per lot with the building permits. Now, the one thing with the major subdivisions, we do require boulevard tree planting, and that's laid out in the code too. But when we've gotten subdivisions in, I don't remember, and it hasn't been many, I don't remember reviewing, unless our engineers review them, the tree planting plan for the boulevard trees in those subdivisions. So that's something, that's something I need to clarify.
Right, if I'm a developer and I'm reading this, it's like, okay, well, here's my major subdivision plan, and here are all my lots, and for every 3,000 feet of non-building, and the 45 by 45, that was the total lot, that assumed nothing, yeah, just the straight lot. That's one plant unit. And so I want to make sure that that's not what we're going to be getting. Because especially as we are starting to talk about being able to shade houses in the summer to reduce the air conditioning load, and we're talking about air quality issues, and we're talking about sustainability, trees are an important piece of that. And so,
So if we can jump to page 51, minimum landscape requirements. So item A is for detached, single-family, two-family residential. It's 4 lots or 4 trees per residential lot. Item B then goes on to say, other than detached, single-family, two-family residential. So item B then covers every other kind of development that'll happen in town. And so that's where we get into the lot, or the landscape areas on commercial sites, institutional sites, those kind of things.
But also be condo complexes or townhouse complexes?
Yes.
townhouses.
Yep.
Then I might take out the major subdivision.
I've got a question mark by that. I want to check that, but I think that's a possibility, yes.
Okay.
But we still want to make sure we're getting and we have another standard in here about, I think boulevard trees every 30 or 40 feet someplace are required. If it's not in our landscape ordinance, I know it's in our engineering design standards for subdivisions.
Sorry, I need to get back to where I started my notes. Someplace we need to define what a plant unit is. I mean, I'm used to animal units, animal units per acre. I know what that is, and it's all defined. 2 goats is 1 animal unit, 1 horse is 2 animal units, da-da-da-da-da. I don't know what a plant unit is.
Yeah, I agree. We can clarify that. The way I was treating it, if you look at, or working it, item D at the top of page 52, where we talk about the minimum sizes we just talked about. I was taking one deciduous tree, any one of those things is a plant unit. Whether there's 1 deciduous tree, 1 coniferous tree, 1 shrub, 1 evergreen. Each of those would be a 1 plant unit in my mind.
So going back to my original, on a 55 by 55 foot lot that actually has a house on it, if it's a part of the subdivision landscaping, they could have 1 shrub on the lot, because there's a conflict between saying you've got 4 trees per lot or 1 plant unit.
But we take the most restrictive, we would require the more restrictive.
Then you need to say that in here somewhere. Because one of the things that we've heard is, well, I don't know what the rules are. And I looked at what you had in your code, and now I come to you with a plan, and you want me to change that plan. On page 50, I love that you've got in there on page 50, item 6, that the mature sizes of the plant materials shall be drawn to scale. Because so many times we end up with something that is wrong sized for the lot. I think that's awesome and great. On the irrigation, on number 9, I think that this is really vague. Is it design the in-ground irrigation system to get through 1 year? Or is it for the long-term viability of the plantings? And so I think that we need more information, or we need to think a little bit further how we want irrigation required. And for so long. On C, I really like that it's the Planning Commission. D to me just makes sense. On page 51, establishing permanent grass or ground cover within 6 months after the certificate of occupancy. That means that, looking at the properties that are being built across the road from me, the entire time that they are building those, it's all bare ground and it's all eroding like a son of a gun. And then they've got an additional 6 months, and then they're gonna come in and say, well, you know, the ground was frozen, or now it's too wet, or now it's too whatever. I'd like to think about a way to get surface covered, even with a temporary spray on, in sooner than 6 months. You know, and if it's, you throw down the spray on almost immediately and then come back and seed or whatever, but having,
With hydroseed?
yeah. But having that bare ground all during construction and for the next 6 months, all that really does is it fills up our retention ponds, and the developer goes away, and we have to redig those retention ponds to give us the depth that we need for stormwater protection.
May I?
Please.
The watershed district has all sorts of rules on these, and they are our partner in
Right.
monitoring erosion control, whether it's a commercial site or home sites. And they do inspections and are supposed to be notifying the builders when there's an erosion control problem and getting on them to stabilize sites, even on a temporary basis. I don't know that we need to include any of that in our ordinance because, well, we have other sections of the code that talks about erosion control, whether it's in the landscape ordinance or not. So that's why I think with the role that the watershed district does by monitoring sites, that we can hopefully rely on them to ensure that the ponds and ditches are not filling up, that the erosion control, whether it's silt fences or hay bales or biologs, are being maintained. And if they're not, actually the watershed district has the authority to shut down job sites if they need to.
I wasn't real impressed with the performance on 202nd this fall, which, by the way, is sort of continuing under the snow. Again, on page 51, I still want to have some more clarification around B there. 1 plant unit for every 3,000 square feet of landscape area or open space. Love the addition of G on page 52, also the getting rid of the Amber maple. I like the addition on the traffic visibility. Again, it's because of areas on Lake Street, where the Mexican food truck is, on the west side of Lake Street, there's that really low planting. It's supposed to be low, but it really affects visibility if you're trying to turn out on the lake from that road. And so I really like the way that this is worded, again, since they're going to have to use the mature height of things. Under D, if you say it has to be indigenous, then that means that it has to be a true native that was never improved. And so I think that,
You're on D on page 53?
I'm on D, all right?
Yep.
So I think that you need to use a different word that would either be compatible or hardy in the appropriate, I just use the word compatible, but indigenous is a really specific word. And so an improved Carl Forster grass wouldn't be allowed, or an improved little blue stem or something like that wouldn't be allowed. And I think that there are some good sort of improved but still native plants.
So if we change the word indigenous to compatible, then
I think, yes, please.
Okay.
The next one I've got on 55. What is an objectionable view? Because in other places, we've required that dumpsters, for instance, be enclosed with a fence. Are we saying now that dumpsters would be enclosed by landscaping? Which wouldn't hurt my feelings in some ways, but I guess I want to figure out what it is that we're going to call objectionable views.
Right.
Hey, this is a draft. This is,
Well, again, that's existing language we just moved around.
yeah.
So if we took out 2 buffer objectionable views and just said use landscaping to break up the apparent? Because you're right, what are objectionable?
And it's up there in A too.
It's kind of like, well, you know it when you see it, well,
Yeah. It's in all these, and I didn't circle them all, but I don't know what it,
if you can't
what would be
define it.
objectionable to Paul might be cool with
Oh,
me, and
yeah.
something that I consider is,
Well, I think that
Glory
we
awful.
could just remove that buffer object and just have it, use landscaping to break up the parent size, monotony, and the screen service areas, mechanical equipment, et cetera, or something.
yeah.
And then we can lump everything else in that et cetera that we don't know.
Yep,
I like
I
that.
agree.
I like that.
We'll strike objectionable views. Not that we're for them, but we don't know what they are.
Well,
I
I
understand.
know them when I see them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, famous last words.
I think there's a Supreme Court case about that.
Yeah. On page 56, L, that first sentence doesn't make sense. Landscaping for sustainability requirements for all business, commercial, industrial, mixed-use, non-residential, and a residential district. There's no verb.
That's a hell of a sentence, isn't it?
It truly is, but I'm not sure what it, I think it once upon a time was a header.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I
I'll
think
check
that that's what it was, but right now it doesn't make any sense.
Yep, I will check that. And I wonder if we need the word institutional in there too.
I believe you do.
Got it. We will check that.
I do like the leaving undisturbed areas alone, that as long as they're maintained free of foreign and noxious. I think that's gonna be helpful to a lot of folks.
Where you,
That is on page 56M. Ken had mentioned that piece earlier tonight, M subsection B.
right,
And I think, Ken, that when you do this, the first paragraph in from M should be a number and not the letters.
Oh, yeah, yep, 1, 2, 3. Yep, just like all above.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
The next one is on page 58, number 6. I have multiple exclamation points and yes in big bold letters.
So is that, you're
That's a-
supportive?
Yes, really, really, really supportive. And that's it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
my absolute pleasure. Have we answered all of your questions? And
Yes,
you've been
sir.
able to provide all your comments adequately?
Yes, sir.
Did Tim or Kevin have anything after?
She got everything.
Nope, I'm good.
Jesse?
Jesse?
I'm good.
We're good?
So, with that discussion, Claire and I will be putting our heads together, sorting through whatever changes need to be done. My goal is with this and the definitions that we went through, work through those changes. Try to get the definitions in a final form, get this in a final form, and then schedule a public hearing. These I think are manageable, that I don't think you need to review them again before a public hearing. That's my goal. And maybe in a month or so, we'll have that public hearing to try to get these moving towards the city council. So thank you for all your good comments and review.
All right,
It's very helpful.
thank you. So we'll move on to our updates. Tonight, we have our new council liaison, Council Member Larson. We always start with our liaison if they're there, so,
The honorable.
yeah, I got a little
Nice.
trouble still with that, but we're getting there.
Thank you, Commissioner, Chair, and members of our commission. Our Monday meeting on the 13th, we had pretty light agenda. We just approved some liquor licenses and things like that, just normal business. And thanked some of our donors and stuff from the Christmas event that we had at Lakeside Park, which we had numerous charitable donations for that. So we thanked our local folks and businesses for being so generous and in supporting our community in that. The only other thing I really have is they just put an email out here today to myself and Chairman Gerard. Next week, we're looking at interviewing 2 candidates possible for my open seat here on the commission, so that's forthcoming. Other than that, it's been relatively quiet. So,
Any questions?
yeah, with that,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Ken?
A couple things. Jeff, am I remembering right that Mark, our new city administrator, should start the 18th of February?
That is correct. Yeah, they were gonna try to have him come in a little earlier, but the city of Centerville was not really quite ready to release him yet, so. And he had some training, I think, beforehand, so.
And so far, he's still coming, so it's,
He's watching. He was watching our city council meeting and made some comments, I guess, to the mayor about things and stuff like that, so he's watching our meetings and taking notes, and I think things are moving along, so we'll look forward to seeing him soon.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did have a couple other things. I just wanted to make sure I had my information correct on that. Thank you. Next scheduled planning commission is February 12th. At this point, we don't have any new applications. Pretty good chance, we'll see. We might have the night off, is where I'm going. So just, I know you'll muddle through if we don't meet, but I just want to let you know. Council next week, the 2 concept plans that you reviewed at the last meeting, the Serene property and the Schleba on Fenway with the little townhouse lots, are going to the council for their concept review comments. You remember both of those, Jeff, and we'll see what the council thinks. And then the developers will decide what they want to do. I think the Serene one, the one off of Goodview is, I think they're pretty excited. I think we'll see that come in as a preliminary plat pretty quickly. The other one, well, we know there was not support here, staff isn't supportive of it, I don't know what the council will think of it, but that's why we go through the concept review, so you get feedback,
That's why we have a liaison.
yes. I was fortunate he was here for the planning commission meeting for that item. So they'll be hearing that Monday at their regular council meeting. I don't have any other updates, unless the commission has any questions of me.
Questions for Ken? Kevin?
Yep, just to our new council member Jeff over there. You know, when Mayor Roberts was at our meeting last time, and we talked about the plat over off of Goodview, he did make comments about budget and not having enough money in the budget for parks and how they would prefer maybe taking that into consideration, money more than park dedication. with that piece of property, the reason that I was in favor of it, because I know the property well, is it would make a great natural park. You know, not ball fields, not tennis courts, not pickleball courts, any of that sort of stuff, but it would make a great natural park with a nice boardwalk through it. It's got beautiful wildlife out there, ponds and trees and wildflowers. That's what I was thinking when he talked about, hey, I'll dedicate this whole land, you know, for park dedication. In my mind right away, I thought, what a beautiful natural park. So if you could relay that to the council and the mayor.
I will do that. I had the same concept idea. I think that you did it, since it's wooded and stuff, leave it natural. If you throw down some wood chips or whatever and have walking trails or whatever, so be it. I know that with the budget with park stuff, and I know that they just were looking at $400,000 equipment replacement to a park, and I don't know how much younger family stuff is in that development to still use it, so I don't know, I think he's just making sure that we just don't throw equipment at every little park, because it would get extremely expensive relatively fast.
And the trail that he referred to, that is a private development. The roads in that area are private roads. And when several of us were around on that particular development that he referred to, that they did their own chips, and it was talked about by the planning commission that those trails would have to be maintained by the HOA because they were not city property.
Correct.
And so I'm sure he probably just didn't remember that. But there's a lot of information coming through now about the value of parks and open space and the way that you sort of build community and build cohesion among neighbors, and help, knowing folks to help each other out when you notice that something is wrong because you've met them in a park or you've met them on sidewalks and things like that. And I think that if we are really wanting Forest Lake to be a community and not a whole collection of residential and commercial properties, those things are important. And as we look at some of what we consider our competing cities for residential, they have prioritized parks. Not everybody lives on a lake.
Yep, I understand that.
And I get that Forest Lake is known for Forest and Clear Lake and Bowen, et cetera, but none of our housing developments are on lakes that we're bringing in.
Correct.
If I could add one other point to that, even if the city doesn't have the money to develop it or do anything with the land, if we don't get it now, we could very well lose an opportunity. Even if it just sits there for 10 years, it's at least preserved.
Yes.
And a plan could be figured out how to use it later. Even if it's just the corridor to get the utilities through there, this is an opportunity I'm sure most of the council understand. And I took Mayor Roberts' comments more to just be aware that parks cost money. And it's one thing to get the land, but as you say, developing them with $400,000 playgrounds, that's a whole nother thing. But at least getting the land in public ownership is a huge step in the right direction.
And I remember helping to construct 2 of the playgrounds in the city, and they are still used heavily now. And the Dragon Park, leveraging that dragon from a community business has been a great amenity, and we can be creative. And there are an incredible number of grant opportunities now to pursue that we have some parks folks that are understanding that because of the importance from a health perspective that outdoor space and outdoor play or recreation are having.
There's movement also in that again, as far as bringing back the Parks Commission, and there's some people that were on it before that are interested in coming back, so hopefully we can build that up and
and get that moving along again as well.
Are those applications open now?
I'm not sure, I know they're just some of the past folks that I know and have seen have had contact with, have mentioned that, you know, I know Blake has mentioned something about that. And I suppose he's probably talked to a few people from past and expressed a interest in coming back, so be good to get that back up and moving again too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim? Good. Susan?
No.
Jesse?
Good.
And I have nothing. So with that, the chair is looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I was gonna go, really?
We won't stay.
It's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you all very much for coming out on this cold evening.